Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review two films. I'm here to review Peppermint, which ultimately you can now see on Netflix. And I am also going to talk about Jack Frost, a horror film that ultimately you could see on Tubi right now. TUBI, it's a free movie and TV service that at the end of the day, you could say that you've seen Jack Frost for the first time in your life because I thought that it was a really fun film. If anything, there is some interesting seductive like moments within this film, but reasonably for most of the time it is a grind away action film or horror film that I thought was just fun. I thought it was fun. People could joke about the effects, but man, I thought it was a fun film. Let's ultimately talk about Peppermint. Ultimately, this is on Netflix. So we have it within this film that we have Jennifer Garner, which is the main focal pointed character, because reasonably, Jennifer Garner does have a kid and a husband. Her daughter's name is, of course, Carly, and her husband's name is, of course, Chris. But reasonably, Riley, who is Jennifer Garner in this film, reasonably is the main focal pointed character. There really is no need to justify for me to actually know anybody else's name in this movie because really it's just you have one skewed journey of Jennifer Garner trying to seek revenge. Really, in the end, this movie, I would probably compare this to probably a Kevin Bacon death sentence movie, or I would probably justifiably match this up with the original Punisher film. Jennifer Garner, to me, when I look at Jennifer Garner, I'm like, she's done some really good films. I've even seen a kind of couple oddball like ones. What comes to mind is Ghost of Girlfriend's Past, 13 Going on 30, and Elektra, which I think is the main reason why I wanted to watch this film, was because I actually liked Elektra. So recently I was justifying in my head, I'm like, is this movie going to be good? And then I went into it, I'm like, eh, it's, 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 it's brutally honest, it is at some points kind of a formulaic action movie. There is always a dirty cop. There is always a drug cartel. There is always a mafia of sorts within every single film. There is always a deal that horribly goes awry. If you've ever watched the Ryan Gosling, Jake Gyllenhaal, or Ryan Gosling, Bryan Cranston movie Drive, there's always that in those movies where it's a deal gone horribly awry. So justifiably, this film, yeah, there might be some normal bells and whistles that go with this kind of film, but then also I had fun with it. I had fun with the okay, while watching this is like, oh, okay, well, how is it that this is going to work during this movie? Because it has to go this way. If anything, I was having fun with knowing how, at points, maybe formulaic this movie was. And I was like enjoying it. I'm like, yeah, this is how this is gonna go because I've seen the movie Death Sentence and it's basically the same thing. It's almost identical, with the exclusion of the Kevin Bacon film. Uh, Stuff happens at a gas station where this movie takes place at some carnival of sorts. So, anyways, I I would say that this movie has a dipping of Christmas in it. Really, it just kind of showcases a little bit of Christmas, but I wouldn't really say that this is a Christmas film. If someone were to tell me that this is like a Christmas film, basically there's a tree in the background for like 5 seconds, and that's what would garner or Jennifer Garner this to be a Christmas film. I don't know. I couldn't buy it being a Christmas film. But anyways, it is probably like a birthday film more than a Christmas. But anyways, mood point is what it is. We really have to showcase that Jennifer Garner is a mother in this film, and of course a good mother, and reasonably. This movie also kind of quasi reminded me of the Angelina Jolie movie Salt in some respects. The thing that I don't like about this is we never get enough time to really flush out Jennifer Garner herself, Riley herself. Basically, there is so much mystery behind this person, and you never figure anything out. Even towards the very end of the movie, you're just like, dude, am I going to find any more backstory about this person? Because even when we do quasi get backstory, it's not good enough to me. It's not it's not a good enough backstory. It's just, well, meh, she's just a spook. She's just mysterious. Ooh, like, come on. Like, you could have give me a Jason Bourne or something, or maybe she's a schizophrenic or something. You could have given me that, where it's like a personality that shuts on and off. I don't know. You could have done any number of things. You could have made her a sleeper agent. You could have that would have been interesting. I think that would have made this movie all of a sudden much more viable. But we do kind of get to where Jennifer Garner in this movie is vicious enough, so that's good. To the point of where she's taking like psychotic like pills, and I'm like, wow, really showing where Jennifer Garner is going to need to go in this movie. And surefire enough, I feel like she does. I'm hoping that she didn't actually get hurt in this movie, because it looks like at some points that she had to she either had to take some falls or something, or maybe they just made her look really great. I don't know. But in this movie, like, she looks like she's doing, like, she's taken some tumbles and stuff like that. And it's like how many numerous times I have to see her just kind of like drop back or something along those lines, where I'm just like, man, I bet like, or I hope that they didn't have to do like, hey, we need to do like 5 takes of this. In this take, could you fall to your side? In this take, could you fall forward? This take, could you fall backward? I would have been like, really? Because I think thinking about it was just like, man, how many times did she have to just drop down and fall and throughout this movie? How many people would just be like, yeah, I want to keep falling throughout an entire film? Get my shoulder in there, just really land on that ground. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I think there was one thing that was missing in this movie, and I honestly think it was catchphrases. This movie to me is almost as close to Die Hard as it can almost get, with even a Christmas element in it. Because really, you have a lot of action going on. Reasonably, it's not done in a Nakatomi like Plaza, but it's pretty dang near close. And to me, you're just missing a lot of one-liners where Jennifer Garner at some point maybe does have little things here and there, but reasonably, it's like, it's not as good as a yippee-ki-yay or some other kind of one liner like, hey, yeah, go to the yeah, go and get some laughs. Hey, come to the party, have a few laughs. Hey, yeah, vending machine here or ventilation machine or God, ventilation shaft humor. Let's go with that. Anyways, let's go into spoilers about this movie. Because really, it's fairly simple. So let's go out of our way to go through this movie. So, spoiler time. About that time to spoil this movie. Ultimately, I guess the timing of these things are getting a little bit faster because I'm just like done and it's either spoiler no. Anyways, Peppermint. So we have a bizarrish out of sequence car scene, which at first, when we're seeing a car just raucous back and forth, immediately you have an image in your mind of what you think is going on in that car, but it's not. Because eventually, what Garner does is, or what Riley does, is kill a man within a car. Ultimately, while she gets wounded, she ultimately has to beef jerky her way and water bottle her way up to pure health and also staple her leg together. Which I thought, I'm like, yeah, setting her up to be this like really cool woman. Just like, yeah, eat that beef jerky. Yeah, drink that water. Staple your leg. Ugh. I've seen enough leg stapling in my life by watching or just stapling anything from watching Arena 2011. Good grief, the Kill and Let's film where like staple that man up. Just either that or you have to like sew him up. I'm like, good grief. God, that movie. But anyways, so Jennifer Garner makes her way back home to ultimately help her little Girl Scout Carly, seemingly with her Girl Scouting duties. It seems like the other dead mother of this Girl Scout troop is ultimately just having her feathers ruffled with Garner, and so reasonably, it seems that meaning that this other woman just doesn't like her. I guess because she doesn't have like Garner and Riley and Carly aren't, I guess, like die-hard Girl Scout cookie people. They're gonna like make a bajillion dollars out of Girl Scout. Who cares? They're just doing whatever. It's okay. But I guess they're not like hard workers enough for the Girl Scouts. So really, they're shunned their by their and assumed that they're just a less than whatever. So Carly eventually mentions to her mother, it's like, yeah, you should have punched her out. You should have punched her out. Should have. So we have it to where we have Riley eventually go to Chris. Chris is ultimately a mechanic, and he is seemingly, when going through this, is contemplating his life being more than just being a mechanic. It seems like one of his coworkers is offering him some job, and that job is probably a wheelman for a getaway, uh, and so reasonably, Chris is just like, you know what? I'm not gonna do this. I don't think it's right. Yeah, it's good money, but no. So so we go on to here to have Carly go with Chris, and ultimately Chris is finishing up for the day. He's making his way home. Garner eventually comes back home to realize that it seems like no one had come to Carly's birthday party. Because ultimately, birthday party. And so, reasonably, Riley is just confused why there's no one at this party. Carly has a lot of friends, so in the end, it's a little confusing why no one showed up. It seemed like everyone was going to show up for this party. It seemed that Chris was just kind of really dreading having to take care of so many girls until Riley could arrive, but justifiably there was no one there. Ultimately, Chris is eyeing the answering machine, and so Riley ends up hitting the answering machine, and so what had happened is the other den mother of this Girl Scout troop orchestrated a better party, maybe, than what Carly could deliver. And also supposedly said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I guess Carly's invitation must have been lost in the mail." Wow, what a cheap garbage thing to do. So Carly is down and out about missing out, or everyone missing out on her birthday party. Come on, kid. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of kids that have been out there that have had birthday parties or any kind of occasion where no one showed up. You're not the only one, kid, and you won't be the only one, because it's happened to people, believe me. So it happens. It happens. So it happens. So going into here, yeah, but Riley and Chris are gonna try to make up for this missing out a party. So recently, they're kind of figuring out some things to do last minute. Really, they are planning on going into the carnival and play all and do all the rides and just have as much fun as they could possibly have. So really, while going off into this carnival, we have we have Chris's co-worker that is seemingly getting some work done, not on his car, on his body, because really you have seemingly some gangster-ish like guys all around him that are like torturing him for information about anyone who could possibly be otherwise tied to him trying to rob them. Ultimately, his coworker is giving him everything, I guess, singing like a chicken. So we have it to where eventually within this time of when all these family members are making their way out of this carnival, because everybody had fun, I guess, we have a drive-by that is being put together by some unsavory folks that are pulling out some machine gun like MSGs or something like that. I don't know much about guns. Shooty bang bang thingies. They're shooty bang banging. Because we see Chris, we see Carly, and we see Riley that is kind of catching up to them. But also the drive-by is also catching up to Carly and Chris, and they get pelted with bullets. It seemed that Riley had also gotten some bullets in her as well, bullet to the head, which is not a deadly thing. It's just to the point of she was in a coma for a while and had seemingly missed 5 years from when she originally was seeing her family dead. So we have it to where now the eyewitness of this whole thing has awoken, or has been awoken, is awake. So we have it to where seemingly a police officer is coming to mention to her, hey, we desperately need someone to point out who these people were. We need to know who did this. So we get to a point of the mugshot, or the point where you have to point him out in the line. Jennifer, of course, does that. Of course, mentioning that she's like, yeah, surefire enough, these are the people. Book them, Dano. Riley eventually goes home to realize that her house is getting an eviction notice. Really, she has to move out of her home because how could she afford it? Because I guess maybe her husband was I don't know. But either way, she was going to move out anyways because this house is no longer a home anymore without the family member she loves being in it. So we have some sleazy lawyer that makes his way to her home, ultimately seemingly checking out her eviction notice in her house. I'm like, what a sleazebag! But I guess that is just to help us figure out this person, figure out where Riley's situation is. And it's doing it for our sake, because otherwise it would have just been like papers in a setting somewhere. And instead of having Riley look at it, we have this sleazy lawyer looking at everything. So this sleazy lawyer is looking at Riley's eviction notice, looking at every single one of her freaking pills, and like, oh yeah, this is one for psychotic. Oh, this is one for pooping. Oh, this is the one for downers. These are uppers, or whatever she's taking, whatever she be shaking with those pills. I don't know, whatever they were labeled, psychotic pills, whatever that means. Because reasonably, when Riley was at the hospital, she had to be like strapped down, or otherwise she'd be slapping people. She'd be hitting and beating the out of people. Evidently, Riley is not to be messed with. She's gonna snap a man. So this lawyer is ultimately, I think, at some point wanting to curve the fact. It's like, well, are you sure that you saw the guys that you saw? Here comes the bag of money being tossed at her. Are you sure that you saw the guys? Maybe you should just let this all go away and move on to better, greener pastures. Maybe you should leave all of this all behind and let someone else take care of all this. Garner is looking at the money. She's like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to pay me off? What are you doing here? Like, get out of my house, you piece of crap. She throws the money at him, shoves him out. So reasonably, we have the court hearing where the lawyer is throwing every single thing that he can at this woman, of everything that he has seen in her home, and really just saying that she is not the best eyewitness. She wasn't close enough to see the people. She also has been on medication, which is clearly going to askew her judgment, which really. Jennifer Garner's character is desperately pointing out, no, it has to be these men, but the judge is like, well, this doesn't seem like substantial enough evidence, so reasonably everything is just like, well, we don't have enough on these guys. Like, yeah, of course that's gonna happen because this is death sentence, baby. This is gonna be somebody's gonna die. Somebody's gonna die in this movie. Someone's gonna die. Someone is gonna end. Wow, is that an interesting way of which that they go about this? So we have it to where Garner needs to kill some folks, so she's going to. What ends up happening is that since Garner is not getting her way, she is going to lace up these mofos on the carousel of that carnival that they had died on, or that her husband and her kid, the carnival that they were at. Garner laces up these guys on top of this merry-go-round, or the merry-go-round. She ties them up there to be displayed in a very ritual-like way. Just be like, yeah, you wanted these guys to go free? They won't be free to me. Nope. She kills all of them. Nobody saw anything. So it's like, yeah, this is a weird ritual-esque like killing. It's like, dude, like, is this that Bruce Wayne Batman moment where like the only person that could have wanted these people dead, there's only one motive here, and that's Jennifer Garner. But recently, no one, I think, is really 100% trying to tie her at first. So like, how can she do this? But that's when you eventually have the FBI rolling in and like, yeah, this girl is a spook. Look, she's a MMA fighter. She's fighting some woman in an MMA cage. She's spooky. She's mysterious. She has 4 different identities. She can kill a man from a pen. Watch out for her, I guess. Or like John Wick, I think, killed people with a pencil at some point in one of the John Wick movies. But anyways, so we have to where Riley isn't just going for those 3 men. She's going for everybody. Everyone that has any tying. She's not just going for those 3 guys. She's going for the bosses of those guys, so to speak. So, reasonably, we have it to eventually Jennifer Garner is pulling the Punisher moment where she is going to where these people are having their money being laundered, and so eventually she goes and takes those guys down and burns all their money, to ultimately when one guy makes it out, the guy that I remember from the show Bones, he ultimately is like, oh my god, like, I can't believe I got out of there alive, with his bloody nose. And so the guys are like, well, how much money did she take? And the guy is mentioning, like, she didn't take any of it. She burned it all. And so they're just like, oh my god, this is crazy. Okay, sure. So we have it to where Riley is burning down everything that these people have. And so reasonably, they're like, well, okay, well, the next thing up is a lab. So you know what? If she wants the lab, we're going to give it to her. Ultimately, Riley makes her way into the lab, and what ends up happening with this lab is they end up trying to blow this lab up with her in it. Sadly enough, they don't get that job done because reasonably Garner is tailing the people who had tried to burn this lab down, and she kills them, of course, because they mention that, hey, yeah, the coast is all clear. Like we're definitely we definitely killed her. She's donezo for having sweat off of our back. She tells them to try to figure out where more people are, where the headquarters are. So after that happens, she eventually goes and kills them, and then makes her way to the headquarters of this. Making her way through all of these men in the end to still have the boss Esh-like character try to run away, try to skedaddle, to try to avoid Garner. It seems like the FBI and the police force are really noticing all these things go down. It seems like the FBI agent that is part of this case ultimately is making a closer and closer assessment about all this. And so reasonably what happens is the key detective that seemingly is really has been wanting to help out Riley within this film actually shoots the FBI detective so that way the detective doesn't come up with any kind of conclusions of this case. And so reasonably this key detective is actually a dirty cop that is working for this seemingly this drug cartel or this I don't want to say drug cartel. It's like because I don't know exactly what I guess they could be doing. I guess it's mostly just money that they're doing. So I guess you just have to assess that drugs are a part of it. But anyways, it's just an assessment. It could be wrong. It just could be a normal gang that is like weighing people for money or whatever. Anyways, could be strong arming people. Could be a turf war. I don't know. But anyway, there's not a huge conclusion about what exactly any of that really mattered within my mind. But anyways, so we eventually just get it to where it seems like the thugs are within the streets. We're having it to where the main thug is eventually holding some random people hostage, eventually getting to some young girl, because what happens in the headquarters, the main villain, the main criminal, you could say, we have it to where his daughter comes into play. We have Garner who is going to kill this main bad guy, but a girl gets into the room, and and Riley's character is seeing her daughter in this girl, and the daughter jumps into her father's arms, which is of course the main thug, and so reasonably Riley can't go and kill this man, so eventually he evades. So eventually it seems like we have a another kind of hostage situation going on. It seems that eventually we have it to where also Jennifer Garner had gotten a bullet in her chest, so reasonably she is going to nurse that, nursing that by knocking down that other Girl Scout cookie mom's home. Breaks it down, breaks her door down, puts a seemingly tampon on her chest, and then puts the bulletproof vest to press on the wound. So we have where Garner finally confronts this other Girl Scout leader girl from this den mother of sorts, and does clock her in the face like her daughter told her to. And so we find out where this mother had ruined her life. Seems like her husband had left her and all this interesting stuff. It seems that Riley was going to viciously, supposedly burn her alive. And then so the woman was like, "No, don't do that." And she's like, "Dude, I'm only joking. I'm just going to walk away." But I thought that that scene was kind of fun. Really, actually getting even with the with doing exactly what her daughter told her to do. So we get to the place of which that we have to do this whole gun out, shootout, whatever. Have all the police come and book them Dano. Because what ends up happening is we have Garner's character who has this live feed to ultimately tell the cops exactly where she is and exactly where to get all these bad guys, and ultimately letting them know what cop is dirty and this and that. So it seems like Garner or Riley's making her way to try to kill certain thugs. So of course the one that she desperately needs is the head thug of all this. Reasonably, the rest of the cops show up. Eventually, the dirty cop turns on the main the main thug, and the main thug kills the cop. So it's like, hey, like I paid you good enough to not turn on me. But anyways, so Riley eventually goes into holding a gun on this villain, and he says like, okay, well, I guess we're both going to jail. And Riley's like, nope, neither one of us are going there. So Riley shoots this villain, kills him, bullet through the back, and then supposedly she gets shot, and we're supposed to, I guess, assess that she's dead, but she's not. She vanishes. She vanishes to make her way to her family's gravesite. Ultimately, the detective finds her, and it seems like she's bleeding out. Eventually, it seems like there is some social media going on, getting behind this woman's like, yeah, kill all of them, get them. So, but anyways, eventually, within this very last scene, we have Garner, who seems to be pulling through all this because she's strong. We have this detective that ultimately is like, hey, yeah, I guess he might pull through. And so what reasonably happens is he slips her the keys to the cuffs, so that way she can escape and I guess make a sequel. I guess if that's really what she wanted to do with the with the. Hey Garner, you want to do a sequel? Of it? Okay, but yeah, I thought this was a fun movie, but at the end of the day, let's go out of our way to talk about Jack Frost. So, Jack Frost. This is a fun horror film that people could have a mixture of emotions within it. Shannon Elizabeth does, of course, another very much seductive looking character. Reasonably, there's nothing wrong with another Shannon Elizabeth movie because ultimately every single time she does great in it, no matter what she does. Here's some things that I noticed while watching this movie this time around. It seems like there was some like coconut, or it seemed like there was some kind of paper shavings of sorts that I saw this time around while watching this movie. I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, this isn't actually snow. It's like made up to look like snow because, of course, like if you're like shooting stuff during the day or you're uh, trying to have your stuff not melt, well, then you have to come up with an equivalent of something to put within this to not actually make your actors severely cold or justifiably like keep them from not actually having to be in cold environments to keep them from being ill so that way they can shoot more and this and that. So I thought that that was interesting, especially looking at the supposedly statued monuments of characters that were carved seemingly out of paper mache or some kind of fakery of sorts, but it's okay because looking at it, like I wonder how much money they also spent on this movie, just because of how really you have the effect of Jack Frost, which is a lot of probably just costume, I'm sure, but there's also a lot of effects going into this movie, which I thought was fascinating. So going in and teeing this up, leading this up, this movie is really about a guy that ultimately gets arrested by the sheriff and is on his way to be put to jail. This man, Jack Frost, reasonably is a convict that is sending death threats to the sheriff. Say, I will find a way. I will find a way to get you. I will seek my revenge. Like I'm going to like it's going to happen. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna figure out a way to get to you. I will find a way. So screaming it, of course, because reasonably within this, within like, man, I wonder if this guy that did Jack Frost, Scott McDonald, I believe. I wonder, like, if he ruined his voice at any point. Like, did he shred his voice doing any of these? Like, I will find a way. Ma, it's just consistently like doing that through a bulk of this film. And I know a lot of it, like after a certain point, is probably like voiceover work or whatever. But and then like some of it is probably a little bit easier than other things. But anyways, so within this movie, we have it to where there is a kind of daredevil like accident happening within this, where every time somebody gets splattered with toxic waste or something like that via accident, I immediately when I look into this movie, I immediately think Daredevil, bizarrely. But anyways, so we have to where seemingly within this movie there's an accident that happens that produces a man to seemingly melt. He seemingly melts into a snowman that eventually Christmases his way through killing people. Eventually, also sharing a tub with Shannon Elizabeth at some point and giving her a little carrot for her time. If you know what I'm grinding my way into ultimately assessing. If you've seen the scene, you'll know what I mean. So we have within here that we have a sheriff in a very small town where, of course, again, FBI agents come in here or agents come in here to assess that there is a big threat coming their way, and that ultimately it's an unstoppable force. really they have to figure out if there is any way to combat this seemingly unstoppable force that is just decking everybody, because ultimately they are basically unaware that there's a snowman murdering people throughout the town because of course it's wintertime and it doesn't seem out of the usual to have a snowman anywhere. But if anything, I really like the points of where you have a villain that is really just like waiting, is kind of really savoring the time for a guy to like get himself ready to come at Jack, and he's just like, dude, whatever you gonna do, come at me, bro. Come on, yeah, like yeah, get ticked, get mad at me, come at me, and then it's just like whatever, dude, I'm gonna tear you apart, limb from limb. It's gonna be great. So we have within this movie the kind of initiative of figuring out how to outsmart this character, and reasonably it just comes down to some unconventional weapons that they say within this movie. Yeah, we have to beat him by unconventional means. What does that even mean? That you have to do something different. That's what this movie tries to do. And eventually there is a Michael Keaton that makes his way to being a thing later on. This is not the Michael Keaton movie. I know there is another Jack Frost movie that has Michael Keaton in it. That is not this one. Man, if that movie was like this, that would be a weird film. But anyways, I guess maybe it would just be a question of which movie came first. Well, it'd probably have to be this one. But like basically, did anybody watch this and want to do a much kinder or nicer variation of this? Because it's almost the same thing. It's almost the same movie, but done with a different kind of genre, where the Michael Keaton one is to where a man is just trying to reconnect with his son and then eventually reconnect with his wife before eventually Patrick Swayze ghosts away towards the end of that film. Spoilers for a film that maybe no one has seen or needs to go and watch it at some point. But it is a fun movie, that movie, but not as fun as this one, because I thought this movie was kind of... It's goofy, it's fun, and it's for everyone to ultimately see. Again, Elizabeth, thumbs up. It's a joke. It's funny. That's not the only thing that happens in this film. But again, anyways, so... And plus, we consistently have a man that is weirdly like feeling a snow woman of sorts, and and he's looking right at Chad and just going, if only. Anyways, yeah. So this movie is really fun. It's really fascinating to see how they break all this stuff down, and yeah, I always go back to this eventually and want to talk about it at some points, because I feel like it's a one of kind horror film that is also again via done by Christmas, because how rare do you see horror Christmas films? So I'm sure there's probably like, dude, there's like 30 of them. There's like the Krampus's movies, and there's the evil Santa films, a billion of those. I think there's like Black Christmas. There's like a Russian Christmas horror film, but there's Gremlins. There's come on, there's billions of them. Sure, I guess. You got the Goldberg Christmas movie, the Bill Goldberg Christmas movie, where he's the evil Santa, I guess. But anyways, so let's go into spoilers about this movie because I've already kind of talked about bits and pieces of it. So let's go into that double five to otherwise go into this movie. Spoiler time, spoiler time. About to tell me to spoil this movie. So, Jack Frost. So this is a man going to jail. He is seemingly within a vehicle being processed to go to jail. And what happens is he ends up having a seemingly a security guard next to him within this vehicle, which he quickly incapacitates and takes out, to eventually have him try to also take the other guys driving this vehicle out as well. That ends up creating an accident and eventually has him via out of this vehicle and ultimately being splattered with some kind of chemical that melts him down to the ground. We have seemingly this character reemerge. And of course, he's a snowman that is killing whoever is left within this accident. So, pushing us on to this sheriff seemingly getting haunted by Jack Frost. Ultimately haunted by the courthouse flashbacks of him being sent away, ultimately him saying, I'm going to get my revenge, I'm going to find my way. Ultimately, the sheriff had kept numerous letters that the villain had to, I'm going to find my way, I'm going to get you. All these numerous cutout newspaper things of vengeance upon him. Okay, sure. So, within this town, that people are of course getting together to do winter activities, put together some snowmen or even snow women, and again with there maybe being some kind of a skewed way of doing a snow person. You could tell that some of them are fake, but it's okay because reasonably, like, yeah, like some of this effects has to like quasi. You can't just, you need to have stuff not melt. Stuff has to wait for I don't know how long, probably 30, 40 minutes before it actually gets shot because they got to set everything up, and who knows how long things have been get set up for. So yeah, you don't want your crap to melt. You don't want your stuff to melt. So we have it to where we have one character that seemingly is the guy that is fantasizing about any woman, to where he has to make a snow woman. And Jill, who ultimately is Shannon Elizabeth, yeah, like you created a snow woman, and he's like, yeah, and it's not you, believe me, it's not just like you, but it's quasi close. But anyways, so Jill is like, oh wow, like this is so great. It's like, well, maybe later you and me can maybe get together and have some fun or something like that. And this guy is like, oh, I hope so. Or anyway, so pushing us on. So we have to where at first Ryan, who is Sam Pyler, is the sheriff of this town, and we have Ryan, who is his son. So while it seems like everybody is having cool fun and everything like that, we have this kid that is ultimately just going about his normal day, eventually getting a bully being placed on Ryan, and that bully ends up getting taken down by Jack Frost. What ends up happening is there is a vicious sled that ends up going for this bully's head and completely chopping it off. man, did that sled go to this kid really quickly and chop his head off. So we ultimately are deeming this head chopping off situation as an accident. And so reasonably, Ryan is traumatized, I'm sure. So we eventually push on to get some numerous neighbors throughout this town. And Jack eventually takes them all down. We eventually, at first, have a seemingly a guy that otherwise gets a axe into his mouth. Like the top part of the axe goes into his mouth. We also have another neighbor where his wife gets completely decked out in her own Christmas tree by basically getting wrapped up and then having all kinds of stuff being placed within her mouth or anywhere else to basically brutally kill her. And I'm like, ugh, how did they do that effect? That effect, I don't like that. The whole glass thing being put in someone's mouth. I'm like, no, no. I don't like those kinds of parts in movies. Those are the like, those are the. But anyways, we ultimately have that husband coming into the home, seeing his wife all deadly decked out in Christmas tree attire, and luckily this man had been able to get away. Luckily, with his life intact. So it seems like we are numerously getting we are getting deaths being amassed within this neighborhood, and so ultimately it seems that the agent is making his way, or this FBI agent is making his way to this sheriff's department to mention about the chemical accident, and he's bringing some scientists with him. This scientist is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. Instead of wanting to take down Jack Frost, he's actually just relishing in the fact that this thing is actually a thing. It's like, oh my god, like I want to sample it. I want to dissect it. I'm amazed that we have found out that the soul is now a chemical that could be placed into something. Whether it's a killing machine, I guess that's. Yeah, whatever. Anyways, so we have it to where this agent is kind of telling what is to go on within the sheriff, that eventually they are sending more agents to come to this town because, of course, this town is too small. There isn't enough manpower to take down this force, and because reasonably the agent is asking, hey, what kind of weaponry do you have? And sheriff is like, dude, this is such a small town, dude. All we have is like pea shooters and just handguns. We don't have anything. And that's, of course, when the scientist is like, you have to beat them by unconventional means. So it seems within here we have a scene where the girl and the guy are going to get their time together. Ultimately, the boy is so excited about the adventure that he's going to have with this girl that he's popping champagne, and he's ultimately looking for ice to put into his champagne. Ultimately, while opening the freezer, he seems to not notice that there are carrots and seemingly other assortment of snowman pieces in this freezer, but I guess it's whatever. But it's a fun little joke. So we have it to where this snowman, of course, how he gets through everything is he liquefies himself into water and then re-emerges, which kind of makes him an unstoppable force unless you can find a way to contain this water source. So we have it to where the snowman emerges and eventually goes into shooting out God, what is it called? I should know this because winter. Icicles. There we go. Like long stretched icicles that ultimately like shoot out of this guy's hand into portions of this guy's body, and all while we have Jack Frost making these jokes about and the wind up and the pitch and the like basically preparing that this kid is going to die, but doing it in a very comedic fashion. So we have it to where these icicles eventually get pulled out. The guy eventually falls, and now we have to make a shower scene come on within this. Come on within. Well, it's not a shower. It's more of a tub scene, but yeah, more of a tub scene. So, if anything, we have seemingly a water. We have a tub full of water. It seems like Jill's character, Shannon Elizabeth, is ultimately just so happy that her boyfriend B took the time to give her a nice bath to get into. She gets into the bath, and then ultimately it seems like she is thinking that her boyfriend is bizarrely getting inside the tub with her, or she's making some odd consensuses that I'm trying to understand still to this day, because it seems that the carrot being pressed into, let's just say, Jill is ultimately going like, hey, no funny business. And then recently, all of a sudden, the bath is starting to get colder, and this Jill is assessing that evidently her boyfriend is making the shower colder, or the tub colder. I mean, the water colder in the tub. That's what I was. That's what I'm trying to say here. I keep going with shower because I think a lot of people, like, most of the time would probably maybe do showers rather than just put water in a tub at some point, anyways. Unless mood point. So eventually, we find out that this water is getting colder because it's actually becoming snow again, and we have this snowman hugging his way to Jill, hugging on to her to where he reemerges, standing, having him and her standing full-fledgedly up to where you can see everything basically, pretty much. Well, there's some, like, there's of course some kind of, let's just say, convenient covering of sorts, which is completely okay. So we have it to where a carrot is being, let's just say, vanishing, and also what is also vanishing is Jill, because she is getting smacked against this bathroom wall repetitively to the point of her getting hit really hard in the back of the head, and also just all over the body, to where she eventually grabs the shears, or the cloth of the shower curtain, and eventually falls back. So reasonably, we have Jack Frost that's like, well, hey, was it good for you? I'll send flowers. Making his way out of the bath to assess his next threat. Eventually, making his way to the sheriff's department, where ultimately they otherwise decide to. They assess to kill the snowman by blowing the entire sheriff's headquarters up. Recently, by finding a bunch of aerosols and spraying a bunch of aerosol within this jail section, and eventually trying to squeeze out of some small window and then blow everything up with some gun. And so recently, that seems that could take out this snowman because heat, right? Well, not really, because once the the flames are all fanned out, we have it to where the snowman is kind of re-emerging itself, re-putting itself together, but it's not quite correctly put itself together, so it looks like, again, like you would mention, Picasso, to where it's a very makeshift like snowman, and eventually he's going to take the time to put himself together. So they're just like racking their brains trying to come up with the conclusion for trying to take this thing out. We have within the sheriff headquarters that it seems that the blow dryer that it seemed like the sheriff randomly grabbed was kind of incapacitating this snowman. And so recently the sheriff was like, dude, this this blow dryer seems like it's gonna work. So we eventually have it to where we have this kind of gunslinger, OK Corral kind of moment, which I thought was really interesting and I thought was really fun. We have it to where Jack Frost makes his way reemerging for it seems like he's falling into their trap. We have the sheriff and three other people, the agents and the neighbor that had seen his wife be killed. They are having blow dryers being pushed onto the snowman. It seems like their plan is to eventually thrust him into the furnace at some point. Because reasonably, they're assessing that that is probably their only option. Because I guess if you can like consistently get this thing to be taken down, that is the best course of action. So, anyways, because anything else is just kind of like a temporary substitution. So we have it to where eventually they are thrusting this thing eventually into the furnace, and I almost said thermos, furnace, and so once they eventually get Jack into this furnace, good grief, they immediately are all high-fiving. They think that their job is done. We have the consistently the scientist that is just like, oh man, like that is my creation. That is my piece de resistance, and ah. So we have the agents that are just kind of like, yeah, job well done. But they notice that it seems that this furnace is leaking liquid from somewhere, and the agent's like, oh crap. Eventually, again, Jack reemerges to kill this agent, and we find that that Jack is having these icicle-like teeth, which I thought was a really cool visual. And then so the scientist is begging to not be killed and like, hey, like I was rooting for you. And Jack's like, oh well, yeah, that's good and great and all, but so the scientist is like, well, could you just tell me what it's like? because ultimately like the scientist was begging to maybe change him back, and he's like, why would I want to go back? Like, dude, like I can't be killed. Why would I want to go back? So the scientist is asking what it feels like, and ultimately Jack's just mentioning it feels great, and eventually kills the scientist, eats him alive. So really, we just have it to where the family thinks that they have won. It seems like they're driving away, and we have the snowman that emerges from out of the back of the police car. It seems that we have this kid who gives his father some kind of sack of sorts that has some kind of chemicals laced within it, or chemical mixture within it. And so Sam, with seemingly nothing in hand, just tosses this bag against this snowman, and it seems like this bag was really hurting the snowman bizarrely. And so while Ryan and Sam were making their way out of this car, Sam Sam goes to his son, is like, "Hey, what did you put within that bag? It seems like it was really hurting Jack Frost. What did you put in there?" And the kid mentions antifreeze, and he's like, maybe there's something there. So Sam eventually has this grandmaster plan of getting his neighbor with this truck to ultimately get as much antifreeze in the back of his truck and meet him at this one place. So Sam's whole thing is to basically try to stall Jack Frost out. Eventually, it gets to Jack meeting Sam yet again to ultimately have Jack putting Sam on the ropes to where there are, of course, as per usual, an icicle being seemingly slowly but surely being kind of put into Jack's chest. Ultimately, Jack is really savoring these moments to where he's like, yeah, seems like I'm getting some flesh there. It seems like I'm getting some blood. It seems like, oh, are you fading away there, buddy? Are you fading away, Sam? Like, he's just like waiting for every little small moment of this to eventually come. So we eventually get the truck to haul up to where Sam wants it to be. So ultimately, when hearing that, Sam ultimately is really fading away. But when he hears that truck pull up, he wakes up again. He's like, yeah, get ready for this. So Sam takes this, like, grabs onto Jack as best he can, and goes through a window onto or into this truck to where he suffocates Jack this into this truck, and get it to where every single aspect of this snowman is just divvied away from this. So, are divided, and otherwise Jack is just trying as much as possible to get every little piece of Jack into this truck. Eventually we find Ryan, who ultimately is like, hey, you missed something, because ultimately Jack had his arm just dropped off to the side, and that is suffocating this kid. To where ultimately, this is the worst part of this movie. So not only is this kid suffocating, but then after that, they have to repetitiously dunk this kid into whatever this chemical is. Maybe it's Gatorade, maybe it's antifreeze, who knows what it is. But when looking at it, I'm like, man, just the consistent dunking of this kid, I was like, God, that looks horrible. And like, even when the kid seemingly didn't have much, they dunked him in again. It's like, I'm like, dude, that looked like you were suffocating the kid. But then, so after this whole dust settle clears, families all kissing one another, and So reasonably, what they end up doing is they end up taking every little drop of the antifreeze and burying every single thing of it. I'm like, well, even that, like, what happens when it gets too hot? What happens if, like, how are you gonna definitely keep though the antifreeze? Like, shouldn't you have like, I don't know, label it "Do Not Open"? I don't know, but when looking at that, eventually it seemed like the antifreeze was bubbling up towards the end of this thing, alluding to were there is eventually going to be a sequel. I've seen the sequel. It basically goes into a Hawaiian like journey where you have a snowman in Hawaii, and eventually this snowman eventually has like baby little snowballs, which uh, it's an okay movie. It's, I guess, some parts of it could be fun. I just like this original. I just like this one off. I think this one is really fun. I think the second one feels a little bit kind of feels a little bit on the homemade side a little bit. I like this first one. I like the quality of it, and I thought that it was a really fun movie. So at the end of the day, I think that's all I want to say about Jack Frost. I had so much fun watching this film again because in the end, I don't know how many times that I've probably talked about this, or I probably even maybe even reviewed it at some point. Because reasonably, it's an interesting movie. So I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.